Some artists paint beauty, others paint dreams. Frida Kahlo, she painted her soul, raw, wounded, and unfiltered. But to truly understand her art, we must first understand her life. And her life was anything but ordinary. Frida Kahlo is one of the most recognizable figures in modern art, yet her story is often reduced to just a few words: pain, love, tragedy. But her life was far more complex. She was a revolutionary, a survivor, and an artist who turned her suffering into masterpieces. To understand her paintings, we need to go back to the beginning, to a young girl growing up in the heart of Mexico, shaped by a country in turmoil and a body in constant pain. Frida Kahlo was born on July 6, 1907, in Coyoacán, Mexico, in a house now famous as La Casa Azul, the Blue House. But Frida, always defiant, later claimed she was born in 1910, the year of the Mexican Revolution, because she wanted her life to be tied to the rebirth of her country. Her father, Guillermo Kahlo, was a German-born photographer, a man of precision and discipline. Her mother, Matilda Calderon, was deeply religious, steeped in indigenous Mexican traditions. Frida inherited both sides, a love for art and European influence from her father, and a strong connection to Mexican folklore from her mother. But her childhood was not an easy one. At just 6 years old, she contracted polio, which left her with a thinner right leg, earning her cruel nicknames from other children. Instead of retreating, she became fiercely independent, often playing with boys, climbing trees, and proving she was tougher than her pain. At 18, Frida was a promising student with dreams of becoming a doctor. But Faith had other plans. On September 17, 1925, Frida and her boyfriend Alejandro boarded a bus. Minutes later, it collided with a streetcar. The crash was catastrophic. Frida was impaled by a metal handrail that went through her pelvis. Her spine, collarbone, ribs, and leg were shattered. Doctors doubted she would survive, but Frida defied them all. During months of recovery, trapped in bed and a full body cast, she found a new way to heal: painting. Her mother installed a mirror above her bed, and Frida began painting self-portraits, saying, "I paint myself because I am so often alone and because I am the subject I know best." This moment, the agony, the isolation, the self-discovery was the true birth of Frida Kahlo, the artist. In 1928, Frida met Diego Rivera, a famous muralist. Known for his political works and larger-than-life personality, he was 21 years old, a giant in the art world, and had a reputation for being, let's say, romantically undisciplined. Despite warnings from friends, Frida fell deeply in love. They married in 1929, a union described as a marriage between an elephant and a dove. But if you think this was a fairy tale romance, think again. Diego was unfaithful, constantly. Frida, in response, took love of her own. Their relationship was a battlefield of passion, betrayal, and obsession. One of Diego's worst betrayals, an affair with Frida's own sister, Cristina. Frida was devastated. In response, she cut off her long hair, a symbol of rejection, and painted some of her most heart-wrenching self-portraits. Frida wasn't just an artist. She was a political force. She joined the Mexican Communist Party, hosted revolutionaries in her home, and used her art to criticize oppression. She also embraced indigenous Mexican identity, rejecting European beauty standards. Her signature look, thick brows, mustache, elaborate dresses, was a statement of pride in her roots. Her paintings became deeply autobiographical, reflecting her struggles, Mexican folklore, and feminist themes. Unlike male artists who painted women as objects, Frida painted the raw truth of female experience. Miscarriage, heartbreak, physical pain, and resilience. By the 1940s, Frida's health was deteriorating. Multiple surgeries, amputations, and chronic pain left her dependent on morphine. Yet she never stopped painting. Her last public appearance was in 1953 at her own exhibition. Arriving on a stretcher with a cigarette in hand, defiant to the end. She passed away in 1954 at just 47 years old. The official cause was pneumonia, but some speculate it was an overdose. Intentional or not, we will never know. Her last diary entry: I hope the exit is joyful, and I hope I never return. Frida Kahlo lived with pain, but she never let it silence her. She painted her truth, unapologetic, unfiltered, unforgettable, and that's why, decades after her death, she remains one of the most powerful voices in art history. Every brushstroke of Frida Kahlo's paintings tell a story of suffering, defiance, love, and loss. But beyond the colors and surreal imagery lie hidden messages, secrets waiting to be uncovered. Frida Kahlo's paintings are her autobiography, raw, intimate, and painfully honest, unlike the grand murals of her husband, Diego Rivera, which depicted history and politics. Frida's canvases explored something deeper, personal truth. She painted her pain, her passion, her body, her struggles, and she didn't just depict suffering, she made it poetic. But to truly understand Frida, we need to go beyond the surface and dive into her most famous paintings. Let's start with the two Fridas, painted in 1939, right after her divorce from Diego Rivera. This is one of her most haunting self-portraits. On the left, we see a Frida in a white European-style dress, her heart exposed, the artery cut, and blood dripping onto her lap. On the right, a Frida in a traditional Tehuana dress, her heart intact, holding a lifeline that connects the two versions of herself. This painting is about identity and heartbreak. The European Frida represents the woman Diego rejected, while the Mexican Frida is the one he loved. The severed artery, a symbol of emotional devastation. Frida wasn't just mourning Diego, she was mourning herself, the part of her that existed only through his love. In 1932, Frida suffered a miscarriage while in Detroit, an experience that left her physically and emotionally shattered. She painted Henry Ford Hospital to process that pain. Here, we see Frida lying on a blood-stained hospital bed, her body exposed, her face filled with quiet despair. Around her, 6 objects float, connected by red umbilical cords. A fetus, a snail symbolizing the slow agony of miscarriage, a flower, a broken pelvis, a medical machine, and a female torso resembling Aztec sculptures. This painting is a brutal depiction of female suffering, something rarely seen in art at the time. Instead of glorified motherhood, Frida paints its darker, more tragic reality, one of loss, pain, and loneliness. By 1944, Frida's health was rapidly deteriorating. After multiple surgeries, she was forced to wear a steel corset to support her spine. This painting isn't just about physical pain. This painting, The Broken Column, is a direct reflection of her suffering. Frida stands against a barren landscape, her torso split open to reveal a cracked column in place of her spine, nails piercing her skin, symbolizing the constant, inescapable pain she lived with. Tears stream down her face, yet her expression remains stoic. She suffers but refuses to collapse. This painting isn't just about physical pain. It's about endurance, about the human spirit refusing to break, even when the body does. Self-Portrait with Thorn Necklace and Hummingbird is one of Frida's most iconic works. Painted in 1940 during one of the most painful periods of her life, it's filled with rich symbolism. Around her neck, a thorn necklace digs into her skin, causing small drops of blood, perhaps a reference to the suffering of Christ. A dead hummingbird, a symbol of love and luck in Mexican folklore, hangs lifelessly, mirroring Frida's own heartbreak. To her left, a monkey, a gift from Diego Rivera, looks on. On the right, a black cat, a symbol of bad luck, lurks behind her. Frida's expression completely emotionless, as if she has accepted pain as a natural part of existence. This painting is a declaration. Frida has suffered, but she is still here, still broken, still painting her pain. Frida often saw herself as a wounded animal, and nowhere is that clearer than in The Wounded Deer. Here she paints herself as a young deer, pierced by multiple arrows, bleeding yet still standing. The background is dark, stormy, symbolizing fate closing in on her. At this point, Frida knew her health would never improve. The painting suggests an acceptance of suffering, as if pain has become her destiny. It's haunting yet strangely peaceful. The deer does not fight, it simply endures, much like Frida herself. Frida Kahlo did not paint to please, to decorate, or to entertain. She painted to survive, to understand, to scream in silence. Her paintings are diaries, confessions, revolutions in color and pain. They are proof that even in suffering there is beauty, and even in brokenness there is strength. Frida Kahlo didn't just paint, she became a symbol, a cultural legend, a face on t-shirts, murals, and even money. But how did a woman who lives most of her life in pain, rejection, and tragedy become one of the most celebrated artists of all time? When Frida Kahlo died in 1954, she was not the global icon she is today. She was known in Mexico, respected in art circles, but far from the towering cultural figure she has become. Fast forward to today, Frida is everywhere. Her paintings sell for millions, her face is on murals, t-shirts, tote bags, and even the Mexican 500 peso bill. But why? It's because Frida Kahlo represents something bigger than art. She represents resilience, rebellion, identity, and self-expression. Let's break down how her influence has shaped the world. Frida wasn't just a painter. She was a symbol of Mexico itself. She embraced her indigenous roots by wearing traditional Tehuano dresses, incorporating Mexican folklore, mythology, and colors into her art, and celebrating the country's rich history. At a time when Mexico was rediscovering its national identity after the revolution, Frida became a face of Mexicanidad, a movement that embraced the country's indigenous culture. Today, she remains Mexico's most famous artist, a figure of national pride and an icon in the fight to preserve cultural heritage. Frida's influence has exploded into pop culture. Her face is on t-shirts, posters, jewelry, makeup collections, and even Barbie dolls. She has inspired countless musicians, fashion designers, and filmmakers. The 2002 film Frida, starring Salma Hayek, introduced her story to an even wider audience. Some criticize this commercialization. After all, Frida was an anti-capitalist, but there's no denying that her image and message continue to inspire people worldwide. When Frida was alive, she was often overshadowed by her husband, Diego Rivera, but today she had surpassed him. Her paintings are displayed in the world's most famous, prestigious museums, from the Louvre to the Tate Modern. In 2021, one of her self-portraits sold for 34.9 million, making it the most expensive Latin American artwork ever sold. Modern artists, from painters to tattoo artists, cite her as a massive influence. Her ability to blend pain, surrealism, and personal storytelling has shaped generations of creatives. Frida Kahlo's impact is immeasurable. She was more than a painter, she was a storyteller, a fighter, a revolutionary. She took her suffering and turned it into art. She took her broken body and turned it into a symbol of strength. And that is why Frida Kahlo is immortal. This was the final part of our deep dive into Frida's life, art, and influence. If you found her story as fascinating as we did, make sure to subscribe for more art history deep dive. Frida Kahlo may have lived in pain, but she left behind a legacy of beauty, defiance, and truth, and that will never die.